The most watched news in Western Washington. This is King 5 News.
Now at 6:30, Aurora Bridge crash.
We've had a terrible tragedy. There's been a terrible loss of life and there's been injuries.
4 people have been killed and dozens more injured when a Ride the Ducks vehicle slams into a charter bus in the middle of the bridge.
I saw a bunch of smoke and what appeared to be the front left wheel pop off, and then it clipped a smaller SUV and then just went basically almost T-boned into the oncoming bus and spun around.
All those killed were foreign students who just arrived at North Seattle College to take classes in the fall, out for a tour of their new city.
And our thoughts, the thoughts and prayers of this city go out to everyone.
Now investigators are looking into what caused the amphibious vehicle to lose control.
A lot of lives just got changed really fast.
And decades-old questions about the safety of the Aurora Bridge are raised again. A live look at the Aurora Bridge with a duck boat and charter bus remain in the southbound lanes.
Large tow trucks are in place to move the vehicles as soon as possible, but at this point, investigators are still looking over the wreckage. Mayor Ed Murray just announced the bridge may not reopen until tomorrow. Police Chief Kathleen O'Toole says it's too soon to talk about what caused the crash. The crash happened around 11:15 this morning on the Aurora Bridge, which carries Highway 99 over the Lake Washington Ship Canal. The wreckage is devastating, and the response this afternoon was huge.
We have live team coverage at 6:30. Linda Byron is live at North Seattle College, where the students were enrolled. Susanna Frame is investigating the safety of the bridge. Ryan Takeo spoke to witnesses, but let's begin with Glenn Farley, who is tracking what went wrong.
Well, first, let me give you some updated numbers about the dead and the injured here. Fortunately, this number has not gone up since this afternoon. 4 dead, 15 now listed as critical, 51 injured people who were transported from this horrific scene behind me. These are some of the first pictures taken by King 5 News at the scene. 2 large vehicles colliding on the Aurora Bridge. A tour bus loaded with students from countries overseas heading to Safeco Field, and a duck carrying tourists, the World War II designed military vehicle that runs on land and floats on water.
I was 10 feet from the bus, behind the bus.
Lance Jacobson saw a lot.
And people on the bus flew through the front of the windshield.
As for the duck,
started overcorrecting. He started going towards the barrier. He got too close, and so he overcorrected and just lost control and just weaved over and hit the middle of the bus.
Another witness following the duck says it looked as if the left front wheel came off with a burst of smoke, followed by that loss of control. And in this picture, you can see a wheel on its side on the ground. The job of Seattle police investigators: figure out what happened, take the measurements, analyze the photos. Tonight, the NTSB is also on its way. Mayor Ed Murray.
The National Transportation Safety Board has taken over the investigation. They're on their way to Seattle. They are sending 17 individuals, and one of the National Transportation Safety Board members will also join them. The Aurora Bridge is closed and will remain closed until the investigation is done. And at this point, it's not clear whether that will be this evening or sometime tomorrow.
This is how it appears to play out. The duck is heading north, swerving. The tour bus heading south, then the collision. The force so strong, that's what throws people through the windshield of the bus. The momentum so powerful, the duck is spun around to where it's pointing in the opposite direction. This crash means there's a lot of energy that had to go somewhere. The bus is torn down one side, damage running deep. The duck, basically an Army truck with a steel boat hull built around it, doesn't give and survives the crash with far less damage. Now, the mayor is asking for people's patience tonight, not just over the traffic situation. Again, you heard him say this may not even open until sometime tomorrow morning, depending on how things go here. Also, he says he's asking for patience and really the city's help, because a lot of relatives for these students who are going to be flying in from overseas are going to need people's patience as well. But for some other perspectives on what happened here, let me go to the other end of the Aurora Bridge, the north end, where my colleague Ryan Takeo is now. Ryan?
We talked to a driver who says he nearly missed a head-on collision with that Ride the Ducks vehicle. This man's name is Mark Gordon. He was traveling away from us, so southbound, and the Ride the Ducks vehicle was heading the other way. And that's when Mark Gordon says that the Ride the Ducks vehicle swerved into oncoming traffic.
I'm thinking I definitely need to get out of the way, right? So I yanked the wheel to the left. I turned into oncoming lane of traffic to avoid a direct collision with the Ducks. The subsequent head-on I had with this smaller SUV, when we came to a stop, really I had little fear left because, you know, we were both on our brakes at that point.
When Mark got out of his truck, he found himself right in the middle of the crash scene.
To be people that were thrown from the scene of the impact 20 to 30 feet. It's total chaos, right? I mean, there was just parts flying everywhere. Of course, the crash. I got jostled around. We finally came to a stop. It was just terrible. There was so many people and so much pain. I could tell what was going on. I just couldn't wrap my mind around it. I didn't know how to help. When I think about how close I came to what could have happened, I really think about how lucky I am to be walking down the bridge right now.
Talked to Mark about the most difficult part in all this. You saw he was not physically hurt, but he said the most difficult part was the fact that he was here on scene. And you can see this tow truck right here. It looks like it's not taking anything just yet from this scene. But he said the most difficult part was the fact that he was there on scene and that he could not do anything. He felt helpless. He didn't know CPR, didn't have any emergency supplies. For him, that was the toughest part. Live in Seattle, I'm Ryan Takeo, King 5 News.
Thank you, Ryan. Because of today's high number of injuries, Bloodworks Northwest made an urgent call for donors. The most critical need is for O-positive and O-negative blood types. Some of the Bloodworks Northwest donation centers are open until 8 o'clock this evening. You can make an appointment online, although walk-ins are also welcome. We posted information on our website, king5.com.
Many of the victims are from North Seattle College, which is about 5 miles north of the Aurora Bridge near Northgate. A second bus carrying the rest of the group and following the first was not hit and took the students who were not hurt back to campus. King 5's Linda Byron is live at the school tonight with the latest.
Those students who weren't injured gathered here and met with counselors, spent time together. Now the campus is quiet, and we're seeing the first signs of condolence. A bouquet of flowers gathered from the yards of people living in this neighborhood. The message, we're sorry, we feel your pain.
It's an awful tragedy.
Willie Moyman went to North Seattle College as a nursing student in the 80s. She returned tonight with tears and flowers.
Just a little note in there that it is from the neighborhood and with all the sorrow for the students. Yeah, we all used to go here to the North Seattle Community College.
The 2 charter buses were filled with international students heading to Safeco Field as part of a welcome orientation when one of the buses was hit by a Seattle tourist icon, the amphibious Ride the Duck vehicle. Hearing news of the fatal collision, parents were frantic to reach their children.
I didn't know because I keep contact her when by the time I heard from the news that it's the bus from North Seattle College got accident. I keep contact her, but I haven't heard any news from her.
His daughter is among dozens of students not seriously hurt who returned to campus, shaken and saddened on what should have been a promising start to the new school year.
These students come from far-flung countries like Indonesia, Taiwan, Vietnam, many here without their families. And the campus tonight, the college president told us he's trying to help reach out to those relatives abroad. But with students in 9 or 8 different hospitals, that is, it is not an easy task. And remember, some of those injured, some of those on the buses also worked here at the campus and were chaperoning the field trip. Much more information we'll be trying to gather for you this evening. I'm Linda Byron reporting live.
Thank you, Linda. The owner of Ride the Ducks says he's heartbroken over the deaths and injuries in the accident. He defended the training of the captains and their safety record to King 5's Alyssa Hahn.
Here at the Ride the Duck headquarters, the operations have been closed down shortly after the crash. The owner tells us he decided to suspend operations temporarily to deal with the emergency. We were there as all the amphibious vehicles were called back to headquarters. Passengers told us their tours were canceled and they received refunds for their rides.
whether it was our fault, whether it was mechanical failure. We have no idea.
Owner Brian Tracy said he did not know enough about the accident to comment about it. But he tells us the vehicles are inspected annually and the drivers, who are called captains, go through repeated training.
We take safety so seriously here. I mean, we have reoccurring education for our captains. We have video cameras on the front. We have cameras on the back. We have mirrors all the way around. They're required to take at least one class of continuing education every single month.
Tracy says following DOT regulations, those vehicles do not have seat belts. There were probably about 36 people on board, he estimates. The captain, who was also injured in the crash but not seriously, had about 2 years of experience here at the company. In Seattle, Alyssa Hahn, King 5 News.
Tonight, a state legislator is calling for action after today's accident. He wants to know why bridge safety recommendations from a decade ago weren't taken seriously. King 5 investigator Susanna Frame has more on what she's learned.
Lori, 12 years ago, WashDOT and the Seattle Department of Transportation did a big study. They wanted to know, how can we make Aurora safer? But the experts' pieces of advice didn't go anywhere. The number of accidents on Aurora recorded 15 years ago prompted action by state and city transportation leaders. They commissioned this study to find out how to make Aurora safer, less congested, with better security measures. They found that an 8-mile stretch of 99 was the third worst high accident corridor in the state, and that on the bridge, they recommended widening the lanes and adding a median barrier, something to keep cars from crossing into oncoming traffic. 12 years have gone by, and neither of those things have happened.
And we didn't take that step as a city and as a state, and we need to look into that.
Is that acceptable?
Absolutely not. I think it's deeply troubling.
The bridge is located in Representative Reuben Carlisle's district. He promises to get the legislature involved, asking why the recommendations didn't go anywhere. And what do we do now?
It's not shocking that it didn't translate into a solution and action, but that doesn't make it okay. We really need to look thoroughly and thoughtfully and responsibly into why wasn't that next step taken.
The state has paid for bridge improvements such as earthquake retrofitting and installing a suicide prevention fence, but nothing to try to keep cars from crossing over that center line. In the newsroom, I'm Susanna Frame.
Thanks, Susanna. Stay with King 5 News for continuing coverage of the Aurora Bridge crash. We'll bring you the latest updates ahead on King 5 News at 7. And updates anytime. Go to king5.com or tune into Northwest Cable News. A different traffic incident stalled drivers the last couple of days. Coming up, what the governor is saying about what went wrong as China's President Xi crisscrossed the Puget Sound region.
A fight underway in western Washington waters will explain why the future is unknown for hatchery steelhead, as some believe they compete with wild fish.
And rain on the way overnight tonight, but will it be gone by the weekend? I'll come back with your forecast.
You're watching King 5 News.
China's president is in Washington, D.C., having left Seattle earlier today after a 3-day visit. President Xi's Boeing 747 took off this morning from Everett's Payne Field. That snarled traffic again on I-5. The northbound lanes had to be shut down for a while between Seattle and Everett. During his visit, the Chinese president went to Boeing, Microsoft, and toured Lincoln High School in Tacoma. Tomorrow, President Xi will meet with President Obama to talk about a variety of issues.
Tonight, we're hearing from Governor Jay Inslee about that presidential visit.
King 5's political reporter Natalie Brand talked to him about trade and traffic.
It is very frustrating. No one who's sitting in traffic can be happy sitting in traffic.
It's something Governor Jay Inslee readily admits are already congested roads and freeways made much worse this week as President Xi Jinping and his motorcade made their way across and around the Puget Sound, from Everett to Seattle, Redmond to Tacoma. Lanes and sections of the freeway shut down, creating miles of gridlock and temporary chaos and confusion for drivers.
People need to understand these are security decisions that are made by the United States Secret Service. And when a foreign head of state comes, They make decisions about what is allowed and not allowed on our freeways. But it is, in a sense, the price of success.
A cost well worth it, says Governor Inslee, speaking to us today about President Xi's visit for the first time.
49 other states wanted this visit. They wanted this visit to show the world that their states could do what we do, which is have one of the most robust economies in the world.
Ours is an economy bolstered by trans-Pacific trade, which helps explain why the Washington leg of President Xi's trip to the U.S. appeared to be a choreographed photo op to build goodwill. But despite the handshakes and scripted statements we saw on camera, Governor Inslee says he took advantage of this opportunity to talk about a local trade dispute in Moses Lake, as well as discuss future deals and opportunities.
We had good things out of this visit. We're going to create jobs because of this visit, and I'm glad it happened.
That was Natalie Brand reporting. Struggling grocer Hagen wants to close 100 more stores. The Bellingham-based grocer has asked a bankruptcy court for permission to close the stores. Most are in California, but 14 of them are in Washington. Stores on the list in our area include locations in Tacoma, Port Orchard, Burien, Everett, Shoreline, and 2 in Renton. Last month, Hagen said it would close 27 stores.
Rivers in Washington may soon be divided into territory for either wild steelhead or hatchery steelhead. The hatchery steelhead are stuck in legal gridlock right now. A lawsuit claims they're bad for wild steelhead. King 5's environmental reporter Allison Murrow shows us how one biologist is working for compromise underwater.
To see how fish behave, this biologist goes where they live, close enough to track tiny changes in size, habitat, and reproduction.
Those juveniles will go down into those rocks to hide from predators.
John McMillan works for Trout Unlimited. He's studied steelhead by snorkeling for over 20 years. He's noticed sometimes tiny steelhead swoop under larger males and fertilize the eggs.
Some years, up to 50% of the steelhead that return to our streams may actually have a dad who was 5 inches long and never went to the ocean.
It's just one of many challenges facing wild steelhead, which are threatened around Puget Sound. Hatchery fish have been used to supplement their declining numbers, but these snorkel studies have shown hatchery fish can damage wild fish by outcompeting them for food and territory. But hatchery fish are often too domesticated for long-term health.
In other words, they don't survive as well in nature as wild fish.
It's one reason why these hatchery steelhead are drowning in legal battles. The Department of Fish and Wildlife is not allowed to release winter-run steelhead into rivers around Puget Sound.
The best approach is it doesn't have to be an all or nothing battle over the hatchery issue, that we can somehow come together as anglers and find a balance.
McMillan agrees with the state's plan to map rivers, potentially separating hatchery and wild steelhead. He thinks hatchery fish serve a purpose for fishermen, but need their own territory.
It's okay to have a social need for something, even if the biological science says it might not be the best thing for wild fish.
Here on the Salduck near Forks, wild steelhead still return in the thousands. It's one of the last waterways where wild steelhead are still digging in their fins, while humans continue digging in their heels. Near Forks, Allison Murrow, King 5 News.
John McMillan has studied steelhead in 1,500 miles of Washington rivers.
There were blue skies and sunshine today, Jim.
Yes, and now some changes, Lori, Dennis, as the clouds have overtaken us and the rain is not far off with this cold front that's going to be moving in off the coast. And it looks like it's going to be wet overnight tonight. Let's go ahead and check radar and you can see what I'm talking about. That's all developing along a cold front from around Aberdeen up towards Forks, Neah Bay, and over towards Victoria and Port Angeles. And eventually, that's going to be working east and southeast and moving into the Puget Sound area overnight tonight. And Futurecast shows that very nicely. So at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning, there's the frontal boundary. Now, I got to tell you, it weakens a little bit as it moves in, but I still think there's going to be enough punch to it that we're going to have some wet weather around for drive time tomorrow morning. But as it continues to weaken and drifts off to the east, the rain really ends pretty quickly. A few scattered showers mid to latter part of the morning, and then this is at noon, and you can see how the rain has come to an end. The afternoon looks like it's going to basically be dry with the exception of the Cascades. And a few sunbreaks, a possibility, and then that sets us up for a dry weekend. Rainfall amounts from SchoolNet, Forks, over ½ inch of rain. That's out along the coast. Westport with about 1/4 of an inch, and Kent, just a few hundredths of an inch. All right, warmed up today into the lower 70s, 72 officially for the high at SeaTac. It's 70 right now at the Pacific Science Center, downtown Seattle, with a southwest wind at about 7 miles an hour or so. Near the Sound, overnight tonight into the morning, 52 to 56. Inland 10 miles or so. Low to mid 50s, 50 to 54 north of Everett and also south of Tacoma. And as I mentioned, your morning drive tomorrow, it may be a little bit wet. May not be raining on you, but the roadways may be a little bit wet. How about the weekend? It looks really good. First, full weekend of fall. Morning fog, fog both days, in fact, and then sunshine on Saturday and Sunday afternoons. Temperatures will be in the mid-60s. And same thing on Monday, with the dry weather continuing through the middle of next week. So it looks like a very nice weekend coming up.
Overnight rainfall, not too much, just a little sprinkle here and there.
Yep, that's what it's looking like right now.
Thank you, Jim.
Ahead on King 5 News at 7, we continue to track developments on our top story, a deadly crash on the Aurora Bridge, an update from Harborview, and a first-hand account moments after the crash at 7.
And the Pope addresses Congress, taking a political stance on some very hot-button issues. More on his message to Americans.
Then at 11, hunting down poachers, the veteran with ties to Washington who found a new purpose, fighting to save Africa's endangered wildlife.
Millennials know how hard it can be to pay off college debt, and a new study says many of them plan to pay for their kids to go to college. The Fidelity Investment Study says nearly half of millennial parents are planning ambitious college savings goals to reduce the burden for their children. The study says most young parents are hoping to cover nearly 3/4 of the cost. A surprising 43% say they're aiming to pay the full cost of college.
The FDA is now reviewing the safety of a metallic birth control implant after thousands of complaints from patients and doctors. They say the Assure implant caused severe pain and excessive bleeding. Some said they needed surgery to remove it. The device by German manufacturer Bayer has been on the market for a decade. More than 750,000 women have received the implant.
King 5 News at 7 is 2 minutes away with another update on the deadly Aurora Bridge crash.
The most watched news in Western Washington. This is King 5 News.
The duck boat and the charter bus remain on the bridge after the crash around 11:15 this morning. Investigators from the NTSB are still making their way to Seattle to inspect the wreckage, so the city says the bridge may not reopen until tomorrow. For the latest on the crash and the investigation, let's bring in Jim Foreman. Jim, you tracked this crash this afternoon from the breaking news desk.
Yeah, from the very first radio call I heard, I knew this was going to be a bad one. We started moving our troops about the same time the fire department did. The initial reports were that there were victims that were thrown out of the bus and on the ground. That's exactly what happened. The response was massive, but it wasn't enough to save a number of people. It was sudden and violent. On this, a sunny fall morning in Seattle, two outings, two groups out to see the sights collided with deadly force.
I was 10 feet from the bus, behind the bus, and people in the bus flew through the front of the windshield.
It is far too early to tell exactly what the cascading series of events leading to the devastating crash were, but eyewitnesses' accounts are starting to line up. Something appeared to go very wrong with the amphibious boat tour.
Started overcorrecting. He started going towards the barrier. He got too close, and so he overcorrected and just lost control and just weaved over and hit the middle of the bus.
In the bus, a group of foreign students from North Seattle College. 4 would not make it to the hospital, killed by the crushing, tearing impact of two large vehicles. On the dock, tourists who were getting a stunning look at Lake Union when their world turned upside down.
A lot of lives just got changed really fast.
What followed was a massive response. So many patients, extra medics had to be called in from out of the city. The walking wounded put on a metro bus. Ambulances fanning out to hospitals across the region, taking those more seriously hurt to get help. It was a beautiful fall day until 11:13, when the Aurora Bridge, a notoriously dangerous stretch of road, claimed 4 more lives. And now, of course, the question, just what did go wrong? 17 members, you said, of the National Transportation Safety Board on their way. That is the size of a major international air crash. That's how seriously this is going to be investigated. The question is, will investigators want the pieces to stay in place, or will they give the okay to open the bridge so it can be checked for damage and it can be reopened? But the betting money is right now, don't expect the bridge to be open anytime soon. I'm Jim Foreman, live at the Breaking News Desk.
Thank you, Jim. 15 crash victims remain in critical condition at Harborview Medical Center.
Some of those 15 are even still in surgery. A total of 51 injured people were transported to area hospitals after the crash. 17, in addition to the critical patients, are hospitalized for their injuries. Another 16 are being treated for minor injuries. Tonight, we're hearing from one of the crash survivors who was riding on the duck vehicle. Tim Gesner from Orlando spoke with our news partner, the Seattle Times, from his hospital bed.
First and foremost, I just wanted to get to my wife to make sure she was okay. And then I believe I told you that's when I realized she was okay, and I stood up and looked forward, and I saw that beautiful girl that was with her mom, looking over the edge of the dock and crying. And I looked, and I moved over and looked out the side, and there was her mom laying in a puddle of blood on the road. And that's when I finally was able to get out and start helping. I put one of the life preservers under her head to try to help her because she was in pretty bad shape.
Gesner said right before the crash, he could feel the back of the duck fishtail and said he heard the driver say, "Oh no." Then, Gesner says the duck hit two vehicles and the tour bus. The impact threw him 2 seats forward and onto the floor.
King 5 has had a number of crews on the scene all day tracking the developments.
King 5 photojournalist Joseph Huerta shows us the chaos and what city leaders and officials are saying.
We've had a terrible tragedy. There's been a terrible loss of life, and there's been injuries.
This morning at approximately 11:13 a.m., Seattle fire units responded to a 4-vehicle traffic accident at the 3700 block of Aurora with approximately 4 different types of vehicles involved. One was a tourist bus, one was an amphibious vehicle better known as the Duck.
The Duck was he kind of veered into the middle lane a little bit, and then he veered over to the right. He overcorrected and just shot across all 3 lanes at full speed, no brakes, no nothing, and hit the side of that bus. It looks like both vehicles are people trying to enjoy, their day.
We have triaged a number of patients. We found that 4 had passed away already here on scene, 4 DOA.
They're trying to work on one guy. They've hauled off most of the people.
We've transported 44 patients.
A lot of cars just got missed. It's just the chance of them hitting a bus full of people with no seatbelts, that's the worst. A lot of lives just got changed really fast.
Thoughts and prayers of this city go out to everyone, to the families and to those impacted.
Stay with King 5 News for continuing coverage of the Aurora Bridge crash. We'll bring you the latest updates ahead on our late editions of King 5 News starting at 9 on Kong. And for updates anytime, head to king5.com or tune in to Northwest Cable News.
There are several other stories developing right now.
King 5's Amanda Grace is tracking them from the newsroom. Amanda.
Lori Dennis, U.S. Attorney General Loretta Lynch was in Seattle this afternoon attending a community policing forum with Seattle's police chief. Now, she talked about the importance of police departments building trust within the communities they serve in the wake of the unrest in Ferguson and Baltimore. She praised the Seattle Police Department for making an effort to address bias, curtail the use of force, and create more accountability, saying Seattle's reforms have actually become a model for other departments around the country. Federal Reserve Chair Janet Yellen says interest rates will go up by the end of the year. She made that prediction in a lecture today, saying a shaky global economy won't be enough to keep the Fed from raising its key short-term rate from 0. Yellen later had to be helped off the stage, which she blamed on dehydration. In the newsroom, I'm Amanda Grace. That's what's happening right now.